Welcome to Fear with Christine Spratley. Living like a head in charge. The podcast where Christine says fear, questions everything, and takes bold action. Christine Spratley is a former professional boxer, nanny, and 29-plus year corporate warrior turned founder of HBIC Advisors, where she is a public speaker and coach. She's been saying fear her whole life, many times without even realizing it. So tune in, spread the word, and get ready, because this isn't about aging with grace. It's about aging with mischief, audacity, and having a damn good story to tell.
Tubs, ladies, and you courageous gentlemen, and everyone else, welcome to Fuck Fear with me, Christine Spratley, living like an HBIC. And today, the title of today is It's My Turd. And that's my turd. That's what we're going to talk about today. Joe, you ready for it?
Yes.
All right. Well, what does that mean, and where does this come from? Actually, when I was 17, as if you've listened to my podcast in the past, you know that I got sober at 17. And as part of my sobriety, I was encouraged to go to AA conventions and participate in AA, which I did. And love those guys dearly. And when you're at an AA convention and you're 17, you're running around being a little shit. And I was running around, and I was just running around with some friends of mine, that my newly sober friends, and standing in the back of this room, and I heard this woman's talk, and they have speakers, and they tell their story about, what it was like, what had happened, and what it's like now. And I really gelled with her story. And I was standing in this back of this room in Omaha, Nebraska, and I'll never forget this. And so I went and I bought her tape, because that's when you had little cassette tapes, way back when. Some of you are listening going, what is that? It's kind of like, when pot had seeds in it. And, and so we would buy these cassette tapes, and people would listen to them. And, kind of like your spiritual tapes now, or your self-help tapes, or your podcasts, sort of like that. So I got her tape, and I took it home, and her name was Sharon, and she was from California, and she was a ripper and a runner. And, her last drunk was, she had gone out, had a drunk, and was partying with some Hell's Angels, and they beat her up and they threw her off this cliff. Wow. Yeah, like we're talking serious shit. Way more serious than I'd ever been into. And so she was in the hospital for days, and woke up, and I guess the nurse or whatever had brought a paper in, and in that paper was a little article. And to hear her tell it is like, there was this little article about this woman that they had found at the bottom of this cliff, and she cut it out. And in AA, they have sponsors, and sponsors are people, kind of like coaches, and they help you go through things, and they share their experience, strength, and hope with you, and kind of an accountability partner and things like this. And so her sponsor comes to visit her, and she's still in the hospital. She's pretty messed up. And she shows her sponsor this clipping. And the sponsor looked at her, because she'd made the paper. She was a victim. It was documented, and she, showed her sponsor that and was like, hey, I've made, I'm a victim. And her sponsor said, and this is going to hit some people the different ways, but I'll walk you through it. Her sponsor told her the story, and she says, Sharon, you know what? She's like, it's like I've known you for a long time. You've been, trying to get sober and staying sober, but it's like you've got this fist here. And inside, and every day you walk around with this fist. And for those of you who can't see, I'm holding up my fist. And, you're walking around like, like I got this fist. And I'm like, Sharon, what's in there? And I'm not going to tell you. And more time goes by, Sharon, what's in there? And every day you've got this fist, and you're holding it tight, and you won't show me. And then years passed, and finally you let me pry one little pinky, and then one other finger, and then another, and all of a sudden you show it, and you go, here. Kind of like a little kid going here, and kind of stick it in your face. And I go, Sharon, it's a turd. And you go, but it's my turd. And when I heard that, I heard it in a couple different lenses, but what I heard was, that's my identity. That's mine. And it's shitty and it's nasty, but it's mine. And coming from an abusive background, no one ever said you were the victim to me, ever. Or they said, I don't know even if I got it, I'm sorry. They were sorry that it had happened, but they didn't ever apologize to me. And it was just kind of like, hurry up and move on. And so I spent a good part of my life making victim, that identity, hanging on to that. And even after I kind of saw that, but that's how that hit me right then at 17. I was like hanging on to this identity, this part of me that was so tight, and I wouldn't let anybody do anything with it. I wouldn't let it grow. I wouldn't let it change. This was who I was, and damn it, I was going to go down with the ship. And it kind of, I've used that, it's my turd, when I've held on to things long after they've outgrown their life with me, long after I could grow and change and become something different and be more than I was. And it's a reminder of what I'm hanging on to. So that's kind of where we're going to go today. And this may be a heavy topic, but we're going to bring levity into it because I'm just a knucklehead sometimes. I was talking to a friend of mine's daughter last night. We were out, her and her daughter and I were sitting around having a conversation, and she was saying, it's so easy to see things in other people, but it's so hard to see them in ourselves. And I was like, yes, and you're going to know that for the rest of your life. You're going to, that's the whole thing about living, is I can see it in other people, but I can't see it in myself. Or I learn it at 17, and then I have to learn it again at 30 and learn it, it's just a different, same lesson, different environment. And so again, this isn't a heavy topic, but it's an opportunity for us to go, what is my turd? What is, I think now they say, what is no longer serving you? Well, some of that shit never served me. Some of it I'm just, and frankly, another example of how hard-headed I am to hold on to stuff. And this is where I did this with my career. Especially, I held on a lot longer than I needed to. And I stayed in that environment a lot longer. And it was working for me. I was getting paid. Everybody was happy, but me. But when I was little, I don't know how I've ever, how many of you ever have gone water skiing? Have you been water skiing?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we used to go water skiing up at Lake Okoboji in Iowa. And we didn't have any like oceans or, it was just a man-made lake. But I remember as a kid, this is how knuckleheaded I was. As a kid, you know how when you go down and you're skiing around, you've got the bar out in front of you and you're skiing around and you go down, you got to let go of the bar. Right. I mean, otherwise what happens, Joe?
Yeah, you just get dragged.
You get, exactly. And I remember them, I'd come up and I'd be like, and they'd be like, you got to let go of the rope. It's done. It's over. Like, and they would just do that. And I mean, and it took me so long to just, and I'd do it sometimes and then I'd forget. And so that's kind of like the lesson that I've kind of had to learn. It's like, let go, open the hand, let go of the turd, but let go of the rope that's dragging you down. And so as I'm talking about this, you may kind of wonder around like, all right, what does this have to do with my fulfillment? Well, what is dragging you down? Another way to look at it, or another way to ask yourself, because I have to do this, is what my plate is so full. Our plates are so full. Some of you are like barely catching your breath out there, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I need to make sure I want everything on my plate that is there. Because if my plate is full, then I have nowhere to put anything else that's better. It's kind of like if I'm hanging on and my hand is closed and I've got this turd, then I can't open it and let that turd be gone and something good be put there. I mean, think about that. What am I hanging on to today? What are you hanging on to today? That if it was removed and something better was there to be put in its place. That's a really interesting place to think. And I think for me, I have to look at it because I'm so busy that I forget that what would better look like? Just even an inch. 5% better, 2% better, different. How would I make this different? I'm always amazed at how in professional world we talk about receiving constructive criticism or asking, how could we have made this better? Because we always want to be learning, right? We're always going to be lifelong learners. But in my personal life, when I go home, I don't want to learn anymore. I don't want things, I want things to be different, but not too different. So if I'm hanging on to something and I'm gripping it, there's nowhere, there's no place to put anything different, anything better. And I've done that. I've done that with relationships. I mean, I've held on, early on and later in life. I've done that with friendships. Long after they've worn out, I've worn out my welcome, they've worn out their welcome, and we're still sitting there wondering what the hell we have to talk about. And I know for me that I can't get fulfilled if I'm living off of what I'm hanging on to from yesterday.
It's like a monkey trap. You ever heard of that?
No, tell me about that.
So a monkey trap is a really low-tech way to trap a monkey. But basically you secure a coconut, then you cut a hole the size of a monkey's hand, and then you put some treats in there. And then when the monkey reaches in to grab it, they won't let go, and they're stuck until you come get them. They could get out at any time if they would let go.
Yeah.
But they just have trapped themselves because they want the thing.
Because they want the thing. And what's crazy about that is we don't have treats. I'm not talking about the good shit. I'm talking about the bad shit. It's a turd. That's what's crazy. And I think because there's a point where you're like, oh, I might have a treat. And then but you're looking at it going, no, that's a turd. That sucks. That hurts. That interaction hurts. Again, I was talking to this young woman last night, and we were talking, and I was like, you are the gift of access to ourselves, and what we give our attention to, what we give our love to, what we give our thoughts to is a gift, is our gift to give. And if they're not worthy of that, if they don't treat that right, if your voice isn't heard right, then why am I giving you access to me if I'm getting hurt in return? And that's the turd that you hang on to sometimes. You hang on to that bad job. It's a great job. It pays really well. It has benefits, all this stuff. But how do I hang on to it? I hang on to it because it gives all those things, but I'm miserable there. Okay, well, what am I doing to get a different job that gives me those things? The benefits, this salary, all of those things. No, I just hang on to the turd. Sometimes I don't even look. Or I just look at other turds. That's another thing that drives me nuts is when I look back over my life and I'm like, wow, I need to raise my bar a little. There's this joke about if you date a bunch of crazy men, what do they all have in common? And it's you. So maybe I'm going out and seeking those things and then hanging on to them. And again, this isn't therapy. This isn't why I'm doing this. I'm doing this because if I want to live a fulfilled life, I have to look at, one, what am I doing? But two, what do I have going on in my life and why? And a big thing for me coming into this career as a speaker, as a coach, as a person that does these podcasts is to sit here and go, what identity did I have that I didn't want to give up? And that was what I had wrapped up into it. And I'm not saying everything's a turd, but what if one thing in your life could get 5% better? What would that look like? And then what 5% would you remove?
Christine Spratley doesn't hide her life. She's real about it, warts and all. After leaving 29 plus years in corporate, she founded HBIC Advisors with one mission: be a fierce ally for women to stop waiting for permission to live boldly. If you want your audience to unapologetically run until apprehended toward fulfillment, Christine is your next podcast guest. Warning: may cause spontaneous HBIC badassery. Book her now at christinespratley.com.
I'll give you an example in my world, and I'll give you a recent. Obviously, you know that I've moved on into my speaking, and I left corporate and did all of that. But the identity of living that life and who I thought I was at 43, and I didn't change everything. Everything was not a turd in my life. It wasn't that. But I had to let go so something more could happen. But the identity of who you think you are, this is a bigger concept for me. And I think, I don't know, but when I've talked with other women, our identity is so important. One of the things that I've realized is my identity is constantly changing. And I know if you're a man listening to this, you're going, oh my God. But it is. And that's the beauty of being a woman. We are always growing and constantly changing. And I forget, I want to live in yesterday's identity, but I'm not. Or I want to borrow someone older than me's identity. Like I remember I was, again, I'll explain in a second, but I was walking and I was like, I didn't know I'd feel this good at 54. And then I thought, no, this is what 54 feels like for me. And so every day, every segment of my life has an identity to it. And that identity is made up of all of my past and all of my present for my future. And so I can't, though, live off of all of my past. It has to include the present and what I'm doing now. And so my identity has to change. And there's this false sense for me of hanging on to that identity of, oh, this is done. I'm done growing. I've got it figured out. I don't have to say fuck fear anymore. Got it. But it's not. We've talked about this time and time again. And it's funny how simple that lesson is that it's going to change. Life changes. I change. And how much me not following my heart for fulfillment, or that 5% that could get better, that is kind of smelly, that I want to get rid of, how much I don't look at that because of, I don't know what's on the other side. And I'm just going to tell you from my experience, it's not easy. I'm like, look, Ma, no net. I mean, yeah, you want to have a net, but you're out there and you're exposed. But slowly you start to build your identity, some off of yesterday, some off of today, and some off the hope of tomorrow. But I want that 5%. And you know me. I mean, if my audience knows anything, I don't want 5%. I want 105. But again, let go of the turd, or at least open your hand. And I've got friends that they just pry my hands open and go, well, what the hell are you hiding? What's in your hand, girl? And you better tell me what's in your hand. You better explain this to me, because that looks like a goddamn turd to me. And quit savoring it and acting like it's not. And I love that, because sometimes I can't see it. It's like when you've been in your own farts too long and you can't smell them anymore, but your spouse or your friends walk in the room and you're like, holy shit. You're like, what? It's like, no, that's what it is. And that's why I need friends around me to go, hey, you want to get better? You want something different? And there's this amazing thing. And right now I'm doing this. I am learning how to have a different identity in what that identity is. I mean, I'm not learning to have it. I'm actually have a different identity, and I'm learning how to express it. And I'm learning to do that with a freedom of, you don't like it, that's all right. You don't have to like my identity. I do. And that's also very scary to say. But I don't want to hang on to things like that anymore. I was driving and I wasn't driving and texting. I was driving and verbally talking, which was then turned into text. And Joy is a woman that I met at a 24-hour emergency hospital at like 4 a.m. down off South Sanders. Great hospital, great people. She was an elderly lady, whatever that is, older than me. And this was about 2.5 years ago, because it was when Abby was little. And Abby, my dog Abby, is a Bernese Mountain Doodle Poodle mix. She's a Bernie Doodle. And she eats everything. And she had ate 4 pair of underwear. And I'd take her in. And Joy was down there, and she had to put Tigger to sleep. And Tigger was her little baby. And so I sat with Joy and got to know Joy. And Joy and I have kept in contact over time, just through text and stuff. But we were literally, I'm driving here and we were talking, and I was telling her, yeah, I'd take old and achy over young and dumb any day. And she said, all the good, all the bad, enjoy all of it, because it goes by really quick. And I said, it's funny how we put off until I'll do it sooner or later. I'll do it sooner or later. I'll get that 5% sooner or later. I'll change this. I'll let go of this turd sooner or later. And I said, but the later gets here a lot sooner than we think. And so that's why I don't want to hang on to that crap anymore. Because the later's getting here sooner than I think. Whether it be, and it's not so much that I have a fear of, oh my God, I'm not going to get it done. It's I want to do it, and I want to do it now. And I want as much of the good stuff as I can. There's enough hard stuff in our world without me hanging on to the rope and being thrashed around. Without me going, ooh, I need to sweep this off my plate. Please take this turd and hand me something that isn't a turd. And the other thing that I've realized, and this was really hard for me, and I don't do this well, is that, and I'm sitting here looking at my hands. For those of you that can't see me, I have my palms open. And I'm looking at this, and I realize just sometimes nothing gets replaced in that turd, and it's just empty. And that's okay. Sometimes that's so much more okay than having the turd. I don't necessarily, I want the good stuff, but I don't want the turd more. I want to take it. And if something gets replaced there, that's great. And that's wonderful. But this old identity, or this old thing that was holding on to me and thrashing me around and not fulfilling me, I don't want it anymore. And then if something better comes, something generously comes into my world, wonderful. So look at your life. I invite you. And where do you want 5% more, 5% more, or 5% less of something? What turd is in your life? What theme, what identity are you hanging on to? And think about letting it go. Just one little thing that you can do to change that right here, right now. Because sooner or later's going to get here a hell of a lot sooner. I want you to be fulfilled. I want all of us to be fulfilled, ladies. But part of being the HBIC is we've got to do that. And that means looking around for your turds. So I know this was an interesting session today, but
maybe the most times we've ever said turd in a podcast in the studio.
That's better than saying fuck, right? Anyway, I appreciate your time, ladies. Go with grace. Have an amazing day, evening, night, whatever. And you are enough. With your turds and without your turds. This is a journey. And you're on it. So until then, Tubbs.
Thanks for tuning in to Fear with Christine Spratley. Living like a head in charge. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, tell her what topics you want to hear, and share this episode with someone who could use a pantry full of boldness in their life. Remember, life isn't about aging with grace. It's about aging with mischief, audacity, and having a damn good story to tell. So show up, take action, and keep saying fear.